Catus Maximus here, this time with a little review of these patented O'Reilly's PowerTorque automatic adjusting water pump pliers. They are indeed chrome vanadium, and I think they're made in Taiwan. No, these are unfortunately Chinese, so it may not be the highest grade of chrome vanadium. Some people have even commented on previous videos about modern steels being better than old steels, and a lot of times that actually isn't the case. And also, grades of steels are specific. If you get 8660 grade steel, that is a very specific recipe. The same recipe it is today as it was 50 years ago. That's kind of the deal with metals, is that they have specific grades so that you know exactly what you're buying when you buy it, and you get predictable and calculable results. A particular grade of chrome vanadium that's 70 years old will be if you buy the same number of chrome vanadium today, it will be the same material. That's how material science works. These things, I think, are a neat idea, because what they're doing is they're essentially taking what would be water pump pliers. These are the Harbor Freight ones, a company called, I should pronounce it correctly now, Catus. These aren't them, but this company actually invented this style of quick adjust pliers that have a pretty high leverage ratio to give you just a bit finer control and to essentially update what would be considered tongue and groove pliers. That's what's hilarious about them calling these groove joint pliers, is these are groove pliers. These have a slot in them. And so the deal is instead of having like a button where you have to take and adjust it, these are working automatically. So you thought, well, why is there a patent? It has something to do with this. There's actually a ratchet in there. And if we look, that's how it adjusts. It uses this little ratchet mechanism, and I think that's pretty interesting. I think one thing of concern is just how thin the metal is here on the beam. You can see that. Just not making me real happy. I had the same concern with the Doyles, and to a lesser degree the Knipex, but that is not a very thick cross-section of steel compared to something like a regular pair of channel locks, even though that's not particularly thick in and of itself. I like the idea that they're automatic. These are not compound. Say the Knipex wrench pliers are compound because you adjust them, but then there's a secondary lever here that interacts with the jaw to give you extra force. The Lowe's Cobalt ones are an automatic adjusting version style of these, as opposed to a version of these, because these also have a sliding jaw, and then when they lock up, you get that secondary lever action through this joint here. And there's a variety of automatic adjusting pliers, you know, the Olympia Turbo pliers, rigid robo grips. I think these are going to end up working much better in a variety of situations than any of these other sheet metal style ones, just because they're just a little bit more compact. You do have a very high leverage ratio. The length of this handle compared to the length of the jaw, you know, you're getting a 7-to-1, 8-to-1 leverage ratio. Kind of interesting that they have this little spring-loaded plunger there. That's also a bit of a concern, because that seems that it might have some issues if it gets dropped. But other than that, for as many reasons that people like water pump pliers, because they're a general use pair of pliers, but then they have the special cutouts so they work better when turning pipes or nuts or bolts or that type of stuff. These are a similar thing, except for one, the jaws aren't particularly tight. That's probably one of the bigger issues here. But even with that said, very convenient. Now, they don't automatically retract, and I kind of would have liked maybe some kind of spring or something in there so that when you open them, it automatically would put it down. I didn't grease these. That's the amount of oil they put on these from the factory, so at least they're well oiled from the factory. That would be the only criticism, but otherwise, taking a pair of these, grabbing something like this, and being able to adjust it just on this is grabbing it in one motion and getting a nice solid purchase on it. It's not too bad. It really works pretty well, and you don't actually have to like ratchet them up. You can have it all the way down, and then the first squeeze or half squeeze brings the jaws tight, and then you can just start going at it. You can release and then reapply your grip to get a little bit more jaw spacing if the handles come together. Otherwise, I think they're not too bad. As far as being too small, you're going to have a little bit of an issue, so you're always going to be kind of opening them, maybe hitting them on stuff to get them to open up so that you can use them. That being said, it certainly is easier than coming up to something like this, adjusting it, saying, oh, that's not quite right. I mean, this is just about impossible with one hand to do properly. See, I got a little too tight then. Let me adjust it. And that's kind of the point to this, is just showing how much more work it is just to use regular water pump pliers, which are already very easy to adjust, easier than tongue and groove, just because these are automatic. You can just grab and go. Different diameter, just grab it and go. And so for that reason, I think they're pretty neat. And I think they will be useful for people simply because they're more convenient. They're going to save you time and a bit of hassle, especially when you're holding something or one of your hands, or you're holding yourself up or balancing yourself. Any number of situations where you don't have access, can't use both hands. That something like this is a bit easier to adjust downwards, just because you don't have to hold the button. At least with this, all you have to do is open it up with your hand and then find something to bump the handle with, and then you can just go right at it. I think it's actually a cool idea. I just believe they should put a little bit more material in here, because that beam really is mighty thin. If you're in a situation where you really got to push sideways, there just isn't that much steel there. So I'd worry about just the strength maybe if you step on them or something like that. Especially if they're leaning against something, you know, like another tool, and you happen to step right there, right in the middle. I don't believe that much steel would hold, you know, 200 pounds of body weight and boot stepping on it. But other than that, these things are definitely pretty cool. Just being able to grab a hold of anything and just being able to easily just go at it, rather than having to fiddle around with some kind of adjustment thing, finding that it's not the right size, trying to find just the right size. This automatically does it, and then gives you the same advantages that normal water pump pliers do. I think it's actually pretty cool. And one slight advantage is they're much thinner. You get a much lower profile with this design. And I think that's pretty cool too. So I only saw 10-inch ones. Maybe there's some other manufacturer, whoever is making these does have a variety of sizes. I'm sure they do. But I'd certainly like to pick up a few more, just because I like this idea. Automatic adjusting water pump pliers is, I think, the next big thing. Maybe not. I'm not great at predicting that stuff. But I do know that for whatever, these are kind of expensive. I think they're like 17 bucks. They're actually going to be used more often than I use anything else, just because the simplicity of this, just being able to grab pliers and then have them grip whatever will fit the maximum jaw size, just makes life easier. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody who's been watching and subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.